the most anticipated airdrop of 2024, and I would say even 2023 did not go as planned and left many people upset. You may be thinking I'm talking about ZK Sync, but I actually mean Layer 0 in this case. There was a lot of buzz, a lot of major big investors in the space, and there was huge funding amount from VCs for this project. However, it did not seem to have met the expectations that people have. So where did it all start? On December the 7th, Layer 0 Labs announced that they would launch their own token. Keep in mind, it was not an announcement of an airdrop, it was an announcement of the token. However, it did not really add too much, I would say, because previously, even before then, people expected there would be an airdrop. And if we look at the daily transaction count, even though the announcement was significant and we can see a big uptick in transactions, so around December there was a pretty low down spot of daily transaction count. Around the date of the announcement there is a huge uptick, and then they go down slightly, but not too much, and they stay pretty high up from that point on. However, it is not to say, again, that people were not expecting it before, because we can see that the maximum transaction count were happening in like July of 2023. You can say that it could have just been people using the network. Why are you so cynical, Veronica? Well, if you just look at the date when this high activity was happening, it just stops abruptly for some reason. And when does it stop? It stops around the 2nd, 1st, 3rd of May. This is when people start dropping off. And what happened then? Well, on the 2nd of May, Layer 0 announced that they took a snapshot for the first airdrop. And you see that you didn't even need to look at the tweet when they took this snapshot. You can just see that, the news spread pretty quickly about this announcement. Between the announcement of the airdrop on the 1st of May and June 19th, nothing happened too much. And on June 19th, we have the announcement from the Layer 0 Labs about the launch of their ZRO token. So this announcement was pinpointed with the distribution of 85 million tokens to the community, which accounts for 8.5% of the total token supply, and the whole community allocation is actually much higher than that, we can see in the tokenomics, so there may be something more happening in the future. Maybe there will be phases, as it is the first airdrop of Layer 0. However, again, I don't know, and nobody really knows apart from the Layer 0 team, even if they do know. With these donation mechanisms, users were required to send 10 cents worth of ETH or stablecoin for every token that they claim. And this was sent to the protocol guild, which is used to fund Ethereum developers. So with the 85 million tokens airdropped, they expected to raise $8.5 million for Ethereum developers. And what's more, they also said that they would match their donations up to 10 million. So the total donation would be up to $18.5 million. This left many people confused and upset because, the usually voluntary act of donation was kind of forced upon them. And they made an argument that this is kind of not even an airdrop, this kind of feels like a weird form of an ICO or a tax for their own airdrop tokens. So what are the takeaways from this? Well, firstly, of course, there are high expectations, especially of projects that are of such high profile as Layer 0 and ZK Sync, for example, as well. People have high expectations because airdrop farming has become a job for many people. Firstly, we need to manage our expectations, and that potentially the airdrops may take some kind of different form in the future. They're not going to be this huge, just money for free for everybody. They may take some other forms, and they may introduce, that's the second one, like the second takeaway, they may introduce some weird or interesting functions for their airdrops, such as proof of donation. I would expect that we can see some kind of more weird things happening. Although projects do look at each other, they watch how others perform with different features, and they try to learn for their own airdrops. They might still want to introduce some novel concepts so that it's not just sending money for free for everybody. And then the third thing is I would like to talk about the market and price dynamics of the airdropped token. So there is commonly a very similar pattern that they follow, and that is that there is firstly a huge uptick, and then it goes straight downhill, and then it trades at a lower price, and then if the project is significant, it may go up in the future. This is not financial advice, this is just a pattern I noticed, so I don't recommend you to do anything based on what I'm saying. It's just something I would like you to look at because I think it is interesting and may help you form your strategy in the future. So let's go to CoinMarketCap and look at layer 0. We can see that if you put the all time, we can see that there is again this huge uptick and then it goes down. And then it really is, people seem to be selling. So this, firstly, most oftenly is a reaction that people, as soon as they get their tokens, they go and sell them. Because people, well, they've spent a lot of money on transaction fees and everything else for airdrop farming, so they're gonna go and get their money worth, so to say. This is a very typical thing that we see with other airdrops as well. So for example, let's go to ZK Sync, which is also a very recent one. We also see this uptick in the price of the token, and then they all goes down. However, here the uptick is even lower actually, if you can notice it there. Another project which is also famous for its airdrop and with a similar kind of dynamics is Aptos. I would say it received pretty good perceptions of people around because it's airdropped significant amount of tokens as well. We see this uptick in price and we see this all going downhill. And it was for like 2 months or so that it was down from its initial listing price, and whoop, what do we see here? Seemingly, when the market started going up, Aptos went along with the market also up. So if the project has some fundamental value, there is kind of a potential seemingly for it to also go up in the future, despite this straight up selling after the airdrop. However, it is not to say that every project follows the same dynamics. So, for example, we have Sui, which on one hand should be very similar to Aptos based on the team and investors behind and just the way it works. And it's just kind of code base. We see that the price of the token went straight down without this uptick, and it went down and stayed down for longer than Aptos. However, despite that, also around January, we see this Sui project going up as well alongside Aptos. And let's look at one last example of a project that received pretty good perceptions of itself and of its airdrop, Arbitrum.
Okay. Now that's what I'm talking about.
See, there is also this uptick in the price for a few days and then it really goes down. But alongside, like if you compare it to the previous projects, it did not go as much down as others. And let's also have a look at what happened to it in January when everything started growing. If we extend it further, the patterns seem to be very similar, so it starts following the market more or less as well. So what I mean to say with this is that it may be worthwhile to go and have a look at the charts of projects that had airdrops in the past and see how they behaved in the first months after the airdrop to maybe help inform your future decisions about the token prices and just what to do with your airdrop if you got some. But again, I'm not a financial advisor, it is just something I noticed. If you're interested in what projects may be driving the next 2024 bull cycle, I recommend you go check out my RWA video on real-world asset tokenization. And that's it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next one.